So I wanted to follow up on the Stryker assault vehicle and push this up to the archives and build on the previous podcast, the previous vlog, where we explored this unique vehicle. Now, right away, the challenge with Battletech is if we're looking at total warfare, where we're integrating mechs, ground support, air support, infantry, maybe even artillery, there's just way too many toys. There's a lot of really great stuff to play with and to play around with. And at the higher battle value, or if you're playing old school tonnage, at the higher levels, I love big games, but you really don't have to worry about choices. You really don't have to worry about weaknesses in your list. Yes, you're going to be facing more stuff on the table. Yes, your opponent is going to have more options. But this idea of redundancy in Battletech, 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is some. When you are shooting at whatever range bracket, or if you're dividing it up where something's going to be really heavy mech busting, something's going to be anti-armor, anti-infantry, anti-air, then there's this idea that I want to have 3, 4, 5, 6 shots in that capacity. I'm going to compare two mechs. They're a little bit on the extreme, but they illustrate it really, really well. If my only long-range support is a grasshopper mech, even if my list is fast and it's going to close, I have one LRM 5-pack. At long range, or even at medium range with enough modifiers if my opponent is moving, am I really going to hit them? And if I am going to hit them and I'm going to blow a double 6, I don't want to do that in the shooting phase. I want to hold that off till we see where we hit, and I want to roll for that headshot on there. I'm still going to take the shot. I'm always going to take the shot. We're always going to roll some dice. Battletech, crazy things happen, and as soon as I'm in range, I'm going to start, mixing up in the action. But I don't have the redundancy on that one mech. I'd have to spread it out to other mechs. Now look at the longbow. One of my favorite mechs. It's not without its drawbacks. I mean, I'm kind of handpicking the best situation for this, but this is to illustrate a point. The longbow, as a single mech, as a single unit, has complete redundancy. 2 LRM 20 packs and 2 LRM 5 packs on there. The redundancy is built in. So what we see at the higher battle value levels is I can build in redundancy. I can build in answers for everything. So I can take multiple longbows. And of course, the weakness to that is if you close at me with some heavy units, I'm in trouble. I have the battle value. Well, you know what? I'll take Thunderbolt. I'll take some Demolisher tanks. I'll take an Atlas as sort of this bodyguard unit and just as a whole move the thing around. As soon as we get down to lower battle value games, now things get interesting because you have to start making choices. And there are kind of vulnerabilities in your list. And these vulnerabilities are going to be known on there. An example might be, I go with the classic, what I call the Iron Hammer. I just take the biggest, baddest unit out there that I can for the battle value. So maybe I take an Atlas, right? Just absolute insanity at a lower battle value game. It's one major death unit. But if I mess up tactically, or if my opponent kind of bogs it down, or Battletech being Battletech, it gets taken out, then all of my battle value is in that. As soon as that unit falls or is kind of immobilized for a little bit, I could potentially be in trouble. And a game from a while ago, this is not related to anything, but I was just thinking about this. I had my Atlas, and he's just blazing away and crushing things and punching things. And this is where my irrational but completely rational fear of kicking kicked in. I'm just Hulk smashing everything with this. I mean, I should just paint it green, right? And I'm like, I'm going to kick that mech. I'm going to run up there. I think it was a catapult that was jumping around up on buildings and just being annoying. It finally landed next to me. And I'm like, I'm going to kick this thing. So I run up, I kick, I fall on the ground. All right, I didn't take much damage. Now I'm on the ground. Next turn, try to get up, fail. Next turn, try to get up, fail again. Well, now, like, everyone is surrounding me and just starting to shoot, and they're going to be stepping on me. Okay, look, last time, try to get up again, fail. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? Totally irrational. It would be the equivalent of if you got headshotted 3 times in a single game. Like that's never going to absolutely happen. But leading into this, that's an example. If I had everything in there, an extreme example, but if I had everything in there, I'd be in a lot of trouble. So now we look at the striker. And this fills a very, very interesting role, not only in the terms of cheap redundancy, but also for games where you kind of need to open up as many options as possible to cover things, even if you're playing what I call a blind list, and that's how most of my Battletech games are, where we agree on a battle value, we agree on any limitations, like, hey, maybe no artillery, maybe no air support, but then you are completely free to build your list however you want. Now, if you play against me, I kind of like punching and kicking and kind of the grappling in there with mechs. It's just the assault, the glory. I like big guns. I like certain mechs. So you could probably guess 60 or 70% of my list. But ultimately, you don't really know what I'm fully going to play. And for my opponents, outside of their player personality, I don't really know what they're going to play, which is why I always believe bring 2 stands of infantry. No matter what, jump infantry, unsupported, Karnov, if they are supported, stock. But this is where the striker goes in. For the battle value, I think it's 530 or 560, somewhere around there. You get an okay armored vehicle, but you get a long-range missile 10-pack and an SRM 6-pack on there. So you get the 2 extreme ranges of long and short for virtually nothing. And it's a lower value target. What I mean by that is you'll have mechs or other target viable units that your opponent wants to shoot at, where you're like, hey, I want to shoot at the striker. I may need to shoot at the striker. But at the beginning of the game, where all my mechs and assets are at their most potent, every turn I get weaker and weaker and weaker in Battletech, based on damage and mistakes I make, I have to spend my good dice while I have them the beginning of the game on more important units. So the striker tends to get a little bit of a free pass for those opening initial moments in the game, But what we see here, what's really interesting is, and you can do redundancy by taking 2 for the battle value, but even if you don't take for the redundancy, the ability to fill multiple extreme roles with a single unit means you're not entirely vulnerable, especially if you can build redundancy with the striker off of another mech. Maybe I'm taking that grasshopper and I have the LRM-5 and I have the LRM-10 on the striker. So we have the extreme range of the long-range missile pack. What this means is you're going to be shooting LRMs. LRM-10, look, I like 20 packs, right? 15 packs. What that means is even if you roll awful on the dice after you've hit for the spread, it's still going to have a nice little bite to it. 10, if you roll average, okay. If you roll legendary, great. 5-pack is a completely different place to take on it. But you have that option. You also, even if you're not planning for it or directly building into your list, now you also have the ability to indirect fire on a 10-pack. So if you get that lucky shot, that's pretty good. You've also got some suppression in there on a vehicle that has decent speed. When we close, now we switch over to the short-range 6-pack on the missile. And what I find here is, as a support vehicle, the striker works well because it stays with your lance, it stays with your other tanks, it's adding a couple of missiles down the field, maybe it's doing a little bit of a direct, indirect fire, all for 530, 540, 550, 560, whatever battle value it is, 5-something, 5.5. And then when you close, it can keep up with your mechs. When you close, now it's the race car zoom. You zoom out and get rear armor on mechs. And in lower battle value games where maybe you're fighting 1 heavy mech or you're fighting some support vehicles and 2 medium mechs, now things get really interesting. SRM 6-pack, shooting in the rear. If you connect with torsos, left, right, center, that's something that's got some bite to it on there. It can also attack rear or side motive hits on vehicles and stuff like that. So it offers that perspective to kind of rush forward and switch over from support to directly attacking. Because it's a vehicle, and I don't have to worry about heat issues, and it's got enough ammo, I'll fire that long-range missile 10-pack. It's not like where with mechs and you have a lot of systems and heat management, at some point the LRM-10s start to drift under, or long-range missiles, whatever size, they start to drift under the minimum. Maybe you fire them off, maybe you don't. I'll still fire them off with the Striker. I may need 8s, 10s, or 12s to hit you, but we'll take that shot on there. So once those long-range missiles engage, they're firing, you switch over to the short-range missile pack on there. In a pinch, it could also work as anti-air. The way I find that works is to keep it with your primary targets. Keep it with your mechs in support. So whatever air assets your opponent has, when they come in to attack your mechs, when they come in to attack that, they're going to be pulled into the range, into the threat bubble of the Striker. Obviously, it's not going out. It's not like a hunter-killer where it goes out. It's literally a support vehicle. I don't want to say the poor man's LRM carrier and SRM carrier. Certainly those pack, one LRM 10-pack is not going to compete against 3 20-packs on the long-range missile carrier. But the armor, the vulnerability, or the lack of armor on the long-range missile carrier, and I love them. But the battle value is extreme, and it's dedicated only long-range. Likewise, the short-range missile carrier, first time you see that, you think, that's a mistake. How can it mount that many SRM packs on there? It can, but again, the armor and the battle value and the vulnerability by not having anything out of that short range makes it different to play. The Striker is kind of a jack of all trades, master of some. It's a very, very interesting vehicle, and I believe in smaller point games, it's a great go-to because it's going to build in opportunities. It's going to add that redundancy to whatever other mechs or support units that you play. You've got the indirect, you've got the LRM fire, and then you're going to zoom car rush once we get to the short-range missile. So something to consider adding to your collection. I know the miniatures themselves, they come in packs of 2. So for that cost, you just buy 1 pack. Now you've got 2 redundancy on there. I have 4 in my collection in 2 different battle groups. Might be a little extreme on there. I've never used 4 in a game itself. It's always 2 on there. But having 2 is nice because it has the redundancy, it has the support. I can still get it in the lower battle value game. And of course, if I have to drop down to 1, that is really, really easy to use.